For the rest of this series of videos about looking at art, we're going to concentrate on Irish artists. And two of these artworks come from the Glebe Gallery collection, and the final one is by a local artist who has worked very closely with us and exhibited here only last year. But we're going to begin with this little painting beside me. And the first thing I want you to notice is that the label beside it is almost as big as the picture itself. And remember I said that at the beginning of looking at an artwork, the label isn't helpful. So this certainly isn't something you want to look at to begin with. And you often see people when they come to galleries reading the label before they look at the artwork. It's a very common thing for people to do. It's not helpful at this stage for you to know any more about the painting than how it looks. So just look at it, as I said before, look at it very closely. It's a small picture, so it's kind of more difficult to go from one side to the other or to start at the top and work down. It's kind of easier to just sort of breathe the whole thing in one go. And it's very easy with small art to look at it very quickly, and that would be a mistake because small paintings are often an artist's best work. When you really begin to look at it, you can see that there are actually a lot of colours in this painting. The blue is really intense, but there's also yellows and oranges and greens. So a little bit like the John Bratby that we looked at in an earlier video, which actually is beside it on the wall. It kind of has all the colour groups in it. It's a watercolour, but it has a lot of intensity. Watercolour can be kind of a washy medium to use. It's often very difficult to get a bit of power, a bit of punch into the paint. And this artist certainly has done that, particularly with the blue. And with paint like that, when you do have a real intense colour, like the blue in this picture, it can be difficult to balance it unless you go for that same level of intensity with the other colours. And this artist hasn't done that. You can see some of it's quite pale and almost washed out and typically watercolour-ish. Whereas other areas are very powerful. That's an interesting thing to notice, the sort of the contrast between the really powerful colours and the weaker colours. And a very difficult thing to achieve successfully and to create some kind of harmony. If you remember back to when we looked at Victor Passmore's abstract picture, and I said that in lots of ways it was very like Hokusai's Red Fuji. It had the same patterns and colours and textures and relationships, just without the mountain. Well, again, if you look at this as an abstract picture and forget about the fact that it's a building beside water and just look at the shapes, at the patterns, how the shapes relate to each other, how the colours interact with each other. Look at it as a purely abstract picture first of all, and then you can jump into recognising that it is a building in front of water and there's a tree in the foreground and there's trees in the background. You can start to look at it in that respect then. And that's the point where you start to think, well, what kind of a building is this? Why is it so close to water? What time of year is it? Some of the trees have leaves, some of them don't. Is it spring? Is it autumn? It's probably not summer or winter. You can start to dig into the picture and learn what it's about by just asking those simple questions, by detecting from the clues that the artist has given you what the thing is and when it was painted and maybe what this artist was trying to tell you. And now's a good time to look at the label, because here's where you might get some information that you can't figure out from just looking at the art itself. So the top part just tells you the name, the artist's name, and some dates and materials. It's a watercolour and paper painted by Nora McGuinness. We don't know when, but we know her dates. She was born in 1901 and died in 1980, so probably the second half, probably from the 1950s, 60s or 70s. So that explains what the building is. It's an industrial building, it's a mill, it's beside water because the water powered the mill. And we have to wonder then why she painted the mill. Was it something that was just really close to where she was? Was it, accidental? Did she find it and think, this looks nice, I'll paint this? Or was she driven to paint it? Was there a deeper meaning? Nora McGuinness wasn't from very far away from here at all. She was from County Derry. So straight away there's a lovely connection. That Ulster agricultural industrial experience is represented in this picture. And you will have relatives, if you're from Donegal, who worked in those industries. I think it's quite important that when you come across a long label like this beside an artwork in an exhibition, that you can be a little bit skeptical when you're reading it, because it is somebody's opinion and they might be right, but they could equally well be wrong. And it's good for you to be comfortable saying to yourself, this doesn't ring true. So The Mill by Nora McGuinness, I think it's a lovely little watercolour. I like her paintings anyway, so I would naturally like this. It's a good example of her painting. For you though, it's important to be able to explain why you like or don't like something. So it's perfectly okay if you don't like this, but you should be able to explain why you don't like it. And equally, it's kind of not enough to just think, oh, I like that, but I don't know why. We're getting to the point now when we're looking at art where it's important to be able to say why you like something, why you don't like something. And as I say, it's always interesting to find how this intersects with your real life.